Hey guys, so I am back with a much requested digital paper tutorial, and this is the one that we're going to be recreating today so that you guys can see the process and maybe learn some new techniques. So I want to thank everybody that has been watching the tutorials and have been loving them, and the comments have been so amazing, so thank you guys for that. Let's get started on creating this page. So we are going to, of course, start with a blank canvas, and I always do mine in an 8.5 by 11 landscape. That's just my go-to. You can do whatever you like, and I do 8.5 by 11, so that way when I export it as a PDF, it becomes, it's just the standard printing size here in the US anyways. So that's just my go-to, but you can do any canvas size that you like. I know that when you first open up a blank canvas, for some reason, staring at a white page is so intimidating and it can get you really stuck. So something that I've personally learned over the past few years of me working digitally is just getting rid of that white page. So just import a background, which is what we're going to start with. So I'm going to go up to my wrench tool and we're going to insert a file, and we are going to insert a paper texture. So this one here. So you just import an image, and you just want to make it bigger than your canvas here. And this one I really like because it's got a lot of like the spotting and stuff from like somebody tea dyeing or coffee dyeing the paper. And then of course, with the vintage style that I like to do, I am going to really knock like either the opacity back on some of these images, which basically makes them like more transparent, or I'm going to knock the saturation back, which takes like, it lowers the color, and takes the vibrancy out of color. In this instance, I'm just going to lower the opacity. So up here in the layers, I'm going to hit the N right here, and I'm going to use this little slide bar to just lower the opacity of this paper. And I think that right there looks pretty good for now. You can always go in and manipulate it later. So the second thing that I'm going to do, now that I've gotten rid of this like stark page and you're starting to kind of get that feel for that, you know, whatever vibe or theme you're going for. So now I'm kind of in that like vintagey vibe. And the paper that of course we're doing today is the stack of books with the teacup. And so I'm going to show you how to import that in as an image and then manipulate it to be what you want it to be. So we're going to go into insert file again. Okay. So under images right here is that stack of books with the teacup. And as you can see, it looks different than what it was on the finished product that I showed you at the beginning. So what you have to do is manipulate this to what you want it to be. So in this case, we're going to erase out around the books, and I'm going to be using a soft brush so that you don't get any harsh lines. You can get closer to your image, softer look to your erasing, and you won't notice as much unless you take like a big chunk out. You won't notice it. You get in here and you get just like that. Once you fade this out and, you know, take the saturation out of the image and all of that, you're not going to see that really fine detail. So I'm going to fast forward this part and just get all of this erased out for you and create basically a PNG image with no background. Okay, so now that I've kind of got all of that outlined, I'm going to show you a really quick and easy way to erase elements out of like a big image like this that you don't want without having to go through and like, you know, use your eraser tool. So basically just select your image and you're going to move it off of canvas like that, and it's going to cut off anything that you move outside of the canvas edge. And there you go. And then you can go in with your regular eraser tool and just kind of get everything else. So now you have a nice image that is just the books and the teacup. And that's about the size that I want, and it's something that you can manipulate later to your liking. So the next step that I'm going to do is add in flowers into this teacup. I have some roses that I want to use that are not by themselves. They are in yet another image like this. So prior to, or when I did the first image, I already did all the cutting out and everything. So for now, I'm just going to go back into the first digital paper that I made and just copy that layer and then bring it over here. So we're gonna go back to the gallery and we're gonna go back to this paper here. Okay, so I basically want to steal the flowers from this image here. 3 fingers and slide down, and you can hit copy. So once you copy, then you can go back to gallery, go back here, slide 3 fingers down here and hit paste. And it brought in that image. I want to just use this part here, which is already done. So what I'm gonna do is use my little select tool, and I'm going to just kind of quickly like cut around like this, and I'm going to hit copy and paste down here. So now I can get rid of this image here and then use just the flowers and bring them over. And honestly, I could have just copied and pasted the whole image, but I'm trying to show you how you can reuse elements from another, canvas or another piece of work that you have done. So that's what I'm just trying to show you here. So now I'm basically just going to kind of erase out what I don't see, how you can see the shading and stuff like that. It doesn't fully match up. So I'm just going to kind of use my soft brush eraser and just kind of softly erase out any harsh lines that kind of don't match up with all of that. And there you go. Next thing I want to do is I want to create a drop shadow on the books here because I want it to make it look like it's not just floating on the page. I want to ground it to the page. So what I'm going to do is, first of all, I'm going to merge my flowers down to the book layer, so that's all one image now. So now I want to take and I want to duplicate this entire image. Duplicate. And then I'm going to use the one that's on the underside, and I'm going to fill it with a dark color. So I just go in here and just go down to a dark color. Okay. Layers tool, select the one that's underneath, hit select, go back to your layers tool again, select it and hit fill layer. And it's going to basically fill that shape with the color you have selected on your color palette. So now if I select that, you can see it is a black filled image of your image here. Okay. So what I want to do is make it a drop shadow. So I'm going to select it and I'm going to drop it down so that it is underneath of your book, basically like that. So now, of course, you want to erase out anything that is not needing to be there. So I'm going to go to my eraser and I'm going to erase out all of this because there wouldn't be shadows existing like that. So now we have that looking, shadows are where they need to be, but it's too harsh of a line and it's too dark. So what we're gonna do is use the Goshen Blur, which is up here in your wand tool, down to Goshen Blur. And then up here, you'll see that it says Goshen Blur is 0% slide to adjust. So basically you just slide left to right and it'll blur out as you go. So we're just gonna kind of slide and blur out that edge because shadows have a very soft edge to them. They're not harsh lines. I mean, they can be, but for the most part, they're gonna have kind of a softer edge to them. If you see here, there's like a little bit of a gap in the shadow and I don't like that. So I'm going to select that color and make sure I'm on my soft airbrush paintbrush. And I am going to kind of sort of softly fill that in so there's not a white gap, because there wouldn't be a white gap like that in a shadow. Now I feel like that looks a little better. Okay, so I'm happy with that now. So now that looks a little more grounded to the page. So the next thing that I want to pull in is some more texture or pattern to the background. So I'm going to go back into adding a file, textures. So now you want to just keep in mind as to how big you want your pattern to be. Because in order for this to cover the entire canvas, I'm going to have to stretch it. Unless I want the size of the diamonds to be this size, then I would just need to either duplicate this layer or just import it multiple times and just move it and match it up. But I actually want the diamonds to be bigger, so I'm going to go ahead and stretch this out to fill the canvas. So now comes the manipulation of this to make it what you want it to be, because I obviously don't want it to be this dark. So what I'm going to do is actually just lower the opacity, which is going to lower the, which is going to make it more transparent. And so that paper texture will come through a little bit, and it will lighten up the coloring and everything while still keeping its coloring. So you're going to go to the end tool, and I'm going to lower the opacity almost down. Actually right about there is good for me right now, and you can adjust it later. And then I don't want it to be a full-on pattern. I want it to look kind of patchy, which is kind of that goes with that vintage look. So I am going to use, I think, just my soft airbrush for now. Kind of use it a little bigger, and I'm just going to go in very softly and just kind of erase out some elements here and there. Like I want it to be very, very patchy. Just until you like how it looks. So the next thing I think I'm gonna do is bring in those corner details that were on the upper right and lower left corners. So here are some like corner details and things. And this one right here is the one that I wanna use. So here's a really great way, again, to get rid of all these elements I don't want. I'm just going to move them. Make sure you're not cutting off the image that you do want. Move them off of the canvas, and now you have just that corner image. And now I'm going to just erase out this guy. You obviously don't want it this big, so I'm going to size it down just a little bit, about right there maybe. And once you get the size that you like, then you want to duplicate it, because once you duplicate it, you're duplicating it the size that it is. I like to size things and then duplicate. So I'm going to duplicate by sliding to the left and hitting duplicate. Then you're going to select it and move it. And obviously I need it to be facing the other way. So I'm going to go down here and I'm going to flip it horizontally and then vertically. And then you've got your upper right hand corner. So now, in my opinion, these corner pieces are too dark. So what I'm going to do is bring the opacity down on them. Real quick, I'm going to merge them down so that they are both on one layer. So as I'm manipulating it, I don't have to manipulate the other one to match. So I'm going to click on it, hit merge down, and now they're all on one layer. And now I can manipulate them and lower their opacity to kind of match the coloring that I want, which is pretty much right there, I think. Yes. And now I want to create a shadow with those as well, just to give a little extra dimension. So I'm going to swipe to the left and hit duplicate. And then on the underneath one, I'm going to Goshen Blur it. So we're going to go to the wand tool and we're going to hit Goshen Blur. And then we're going to just slide to the right and it'll start to blur that, so you can see, you should be able to see that happening. So now I'm just messing with the opacity of the shadow layer, and I think I want it to be just a tad darker than it was. Maybe like that for now. And let's see how that all looks together. So if I turn it off, you can see the difference, and back on. And honestly, it's actually all a little too dark still for me. So I am going to lower the opacity on this again. And I'm going to lower the opacity on these guys. So off, on, and I think that looks really good. The next thing I wanted to do was to bring in the element of these roses here, but in bigger form as part of the background to kind of tie it all in. So what I'm gonna do is actually, let me show you how I did this in the previous one. Before I merged all of these flowers down, after I cut them out in the previous paper that I did, I had saved it as just a flower image. So what I'm gonna do is go in and steal that image from the other paper and pull it in for you. I'm gonna go over here, I'm gonna turn everything back on. Okay, so it's basically this image right here. So what I'm gonna do is copy that layer, go to the gallery, go back to my image here, and I'm going to use 3 fingers and swipe down and hit paste. And then you take and you really knock that opacity back, and it makes it look like it's part of the background. And I think that just looks so, so, so pretty. I personally don't want the texture of this diamond pattern coming through on them like you see right here. So I'm going to select my diamond pattern layer, and I'm going to erase out wherever the flowers are so that it looks like the flowers are on top of that texture. So we're gonna select this layer here, and then I'm going to use my soft brush, and I'm going to erase out all of that diamond pattern that's coming through the flowers, because I just don't like it. And there you go. So that just makes the flowers stand out just a little bit more, makes it look like they're kind of coming out over top of the texture. So one of the next things that I am going to do is I always bring in like a burnt edge to my pieces. And I have a PNG file that I saved that is the 8.5 by 11 size is how I saved it. So it's gonna bring it in perfectly to fit this 8.5 by 11 canvas that I'm working on right now. And this is the file that I created here. And you can see it brings it in perfectly. So I want it to not be this brown color. I want to change it so that it has more of like a dark pinky color. So I'm gonna go into the hue, saturation, and brightness, and I'm going to manipulate that to be more pink. So I'm just gonna move this until okay, so there's a perfect pink right there. I love that. And then I'm going to obviously knock back the opacity of it just a tad. I don't want it to be that dark. So I'm going to select that layer, go to the end tool, and I'm going to knock that opacity back a little bit. And so now you can see with it off and with it on. And it just gives it such a nice finish. I mean, it's basically like when you print something out or you have a piece of ephemera and you want to use your vintage photo or your walnut stain to ink the edges. That's basically kind of what you're doing here, is giving it that vintagey kind of edge. One of the last elements, actually no, there's a couple elements. So one is adding that text background in, and I want it to be behind the flowers but on top of all of the other background stuff. And I add in that scripting. And obviously we don't want it to look how it looks. So I'm going to use my soft brush again to basically get rid of all of these hard edges of the image, and to also get rid of this blue. And I'm just softening up any hard edge. Knock the opacity back, and this is gonna be pretty much non-existent. So pretty much right there, I think. Of course, I want it to be behind the flowers. But obviously I don't want it to look square like this. You want it to look random. So I am going to actually, before I do that, I'm going to duplicate this because I'm going to use it another time and move it around. So I'm going to select this and just kind of move this over here because I want it to be kind of like behind the books as well. And I'm gonna start erasing out. Number one, I don't want it to look like it's on top of the flowers. So I'm gonna have to erase out the script where it hits the flowers. So that's the first thing I'm gonna do. So we're gonna zoom in here so you can see, and I'm just going to erase out everywhere the script hits the flowers. And then the next thing you want to do is kind of make it look like it's more random. So I'm going to kind of erase out like that. Erase out like that. Down here. Kind of want erase that one out. I really don't want that like that. There we go. Okay, go to this one and I'm going to erase out, I think there. And then I'm going to select it and I'm going to pull it out just a little bit. Of course, if you zoom in, you can see that some of the text looks like it's laying on top of the book, so I'm going to erase that out. I actually don't really like this there, but I do like a little bit of text right there. Okay. And then I think that I do want a little bit more text peeking out like over here maybe. I like to do things in kind of like threes or, you know, odd numbers. There's just something aesthetically pleasing about that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to duplicate one of these text layers and select it. And then I'm going to like bring it up here, that, and then I'm going to erase out, I think like this one, and then like that. Actually, I don't love that. I'm going to bring it down just a little bit more like that. And to be honest with you, I think that I want to bring a little bit down here as well. So I'm going to duplicate this one. I'm going to select it, bring it over this way. I mean, like not very much really. It's very, very minute. Like it's just part of the page. Okay, I think that kind of completes it. It's like everything was over to the right and it's almost like it needed a little bit of balance. So I think that I'm very happy with that. And then the last element that I added in, because when I got to this point, I felt like it started to look like a postcard. So I wanted to add in that like postcard stamp. So I'm gonna pull that in, and obviously I'm not using all of this, but I had decided to use this Paris one, and then I wanted to use these over top of it. So what I'm gonna do is use my select tool, and I'm going to cut that out, select it, move it over here, make it to match. Actually, before I do that, I'm gonna move this down here. Because I need to get rid of all these other elements. So I'm going to select this entire thing and I'm going to cut off everything I can, and then I'm going to erase out this guy here. Then I can use my select tool and redo that and move it over top of the Paris thing. And then I'm going to move it over here and make it smaller. And I kind of want to, you know, layer it with this corner piece like that. I'm gonna knock the opacity back. So it's really gonna be knocked back as well. There we go. All right. I'm actually very happy with how that came out. And let's go back to our gallery and kind of look at the difference. So you can see right here, this is the one that I showed you in the beginning, and this is the one we just created, and they're very similar, but this one is a little darker. And so, I mean, honestly, I like them both, but it just comes down to your preference on what you want. And you can go back and, you know, like you can duplicate your canvases and then do something a little different, like maybe go with a green theme, and you could like manipulate your elements to have kind of like a greener tone or a bluer tone or whatever you want. You can play around with. It's so fun. So that's how you play around and manipulate. And I really hope that you guys got a lot of value out of this video. If you did, give my give the video a thumbs up and like and subscribe to my channel, and stay tuned for future videos. If you have any questions or things you'd like to suggest for the next videos, let me know in the comments below, and I always try to accommodate those in my following videos or answer the questions there in the comments. So until next time, guys, happy journaling, happy creating. See you next time. Bye.